Let's talk about the practical ways in which individuals can take a stand against racism. So, for anyone watching or listening, how can they incorporate anti-racism into their daily lives? Farah, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, I think, echoing what Aya said is it change begins at home. So that's the first place. And we sort of have to maybe make some tough love choices, because the root cause of change won't happen if we don't try to transform those mindsets and just accept what is. So, you know, even Indians have been historically racist in Africa, in a land that wasn't even theirs. So and that older generation are the ones that are much harder to really kind of shift that mindset. So first of all, whether whoever's in your immediate environment, it's very important to sort of take that stand, to show them a path, to expose them to what it's like to be on the other end of the equation as well. I mean, surely if you receive that behavior to yourself, you're not going to like being on the other end of the spectrum. But then in the same vein, we also have to, I think, taking a stand also means really questioning who we're serving in a professional context also has that commitment to becoming a truly anti-racist organization or an industry, and that those people or organizations, they go above and beyond supporting mental well-being in the workplace, and they have those sort of things in place. And then thirdly, I think it also goes into our consumer choices too, because again, we all have responsibility to educate ourselves about how harmonious a supply chain is, and how respectful to the environment that company is. And just because a factory is thousands of miles away, it doesn't really mean it's out of sight and out of mind. So taking a stand against racism, I think, begins in the home, it goes in the workplace, and then it comes in through as the purchasing decisions that we make.
Exactly. Well said. I am Maria. What do you think? How can anyone watching or listening incorporate anti-racism into their daily lives?
Okay, so as I previously mentioned, racism is something acquired and it's something we learn. So to incorporate it into our daily lives, we need to go into that process of unlearning. So first, you need to take accountability. So you say that, okay, am I being racist in my actions? And if yes, where am I being racist? How am I being racist? And how do I fix it? So it starts really internally. And then through your daily life, it really differs on your context. For example, if you're, again, like me, a college student, and you have people of color in your class, take a step towards them, especially if they're like a minority in your country. Take a step towards them, ask them to go hang out for a coffee, and just like build that diverse community around you. Do not surround yourselves with people who only resemble you. So take a step, have different kinds of friends, and so on. As well, for example, if you're a job seeker and you're about to sign a contract and you have offers from different companies, see which companies are actually standing up for diversity, where you are going to be in a diverse workplace where different cultures are represented, different ethnicities are represented, and everyone has an equal chance of succeeding in that organization. Because that's really the kind of organization you want to be part of. You do not want to be a part of an organization that is racist in the recruitment process or racist in the way that they conduct promotions. So it's really based on where you are in life. You need to see how to best be inclusive in the way you live your life and not to discriminate against others.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned the workplace as well. But what if you have a job interview at a company that you really want to work for, but you can see that, there is just no diversity whatsoever? How would you kind of tackle that situation then? Would you kind of like ask them what they're doing about racism and ask them whether they're wanting to improve diversity in the workplace? Or would you kind of just... Because I think that's a huge part of it as well. As you said, where you work is very, very important.
That's definitely a huge part of it. And for example, if I were interviewing at that company, by nature, I'm a person who likes to take initiative. So I would actually be proactive about it, ask them about what policies they have in place for diversity and inclusion. And then if they lack in a certain area, I would actually propose something. Like, okay, why don't you establish an office to do that? Why don't you have such policies implemented that are implemented in many other companies in that sector? And then if you are part of a company like that, like you're already part of a company that does not have the necessary diversity measures taken, you can spearhead that change inside your company and like make that internal impact within it in order to help your company be a more inclusive place for others.
Exactly. And Husna, what do you think?
Um, just stand beside people who you feel are being discriminated because of their race. Also, make a diversity of friends. You don't have to have only friends who resemble you, just like Aya said. Also, when you are in certain situations where you feel like I've done something racist or my family is so racist, it's first thing is to realize that realizing what you have done, learning about it, learning about the forms of racism, or asking your friends and apologizing to them if they have done anything related to racism to if you've done anything in racism to them. Also, just feel free to talk about the problems. If you are facing racism anywhere around you, just talk about it with a friend. Don't just keep it in you because it will cause problems. Talk about it with someone who you know can support you throughout the whole process. Also, just guide you on and try to guide each other on how to solve the problem. Having friends is such a big deal because it's always strength in numbers. As long as you have lots of people behind you, you can just fight against anything.
Exactly, Husna. It's very important to have a support system and to speak to people as well when you're experiencing racism, whether it's at work, whether it's at school, university. It's very important to speak to someone. And finally, guys, very briefly, which organizations can young people support? I am Maria.
Yes, that's actually a really tough question because there are so many organizations working to counter racism. So I will not be mentioning any specific one, but what I would say is that do your research. You would directly find organizations fighting racism in your country, in your community, and support those because it really starts at the grassroots level. And to educate yourselves, go on the websites of huge organizations that are working for that. I mentioned the United Nations Fight Racism page, and you can find so many similar ones. So educate yourself, support those organizations in your community, and help be part of that change.
Great. And Husna?
One that I know of is UNICEF, the UN, that they are very invested in fighting racism because it's an organization that wants to bring the world together. So if you're looking for ideas on what racism could be, you could just Google the UN. You can visit the page that Ed talked about.
Yeah. And Farah, are there any organizations that young people can support, viewers can support, do you reckon?
I think, echoing what Aya-Marie said, there's obviously there's so many players and, small, medium, large. And I think actually where we really need to be looking in is, who do we work for? What is it like at home? And then really kind of trying to reach out to those resources as well. So I think, there are two podcasts that are fantastic in talking about these things. One's called the Echo Chamber podcast by Ez and Jade. And the one's called Intersectionality Matters by Kimberly Crenshaw. Those are two really good podcasts that I find tackles the issue quite in an interesting way. Also, so many great books. White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo is a great book. So I think, doing that kind of research and then finding yourself, aligned to a sort of organization that's taking the steps and also has direct accountability. Sometimes the larger organizations, it's much harder to get that accountability because it's just you can't sort of speak to the people who are the key change makers. And as Aya-Marie said, maybe going deeper within an industry and industry alliances and that type of thing might have more immediate change.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think new media as well. We can honestly look online on TikTok, on Twitter, and there's so many anti-racism activists, people that we can actually learn from as well. But yeah, you guys have been amazing. That brings our discussion on anti-racism to a close here on Space Transformers Live. I'd like to say a huge thank you to our panelists. That conversation was so insightful and refreshing. I am Maria, Farah and Husna. Thank you for a terrific conversation. And a reminder that you can join Peace One Day's next digital live event on anti-racism live on the 21st of March 2022 via peaceoneday.org and at Peace One Day on Twitter.